Good morning, everybody. My name is Stanley Bear Thunderheart, but you can just go ahead and call me Bear. And usually today, I usually don't talk about pro wrestling. Usually mixed martial arts and something like that. I really like to talk about and other things like that. But let me be honest with you and say that I do like professional wrestling too. I just don't go around spending time talking about it because I just don't have a pull to it for some reason, but in the normal circumstances. But today I've been, as of late, I've been reading so many articles and so many things on wrestling sources, wrestling news sources, like such as WrestlingNewsSource.com and various other sources in regarding a professional wrestler who is a dead man walking right now. I'm talking about it by the name of Scott Hall. Now, of all of those who don't know who he is, he's a professional wrestler who has been around for a long time. He was Razor Ramon in the WWE, and he was, of course, Scott Hall as a member of the NWO. Plus, also, I just forgot, he was also a member of the Clique, too, along with Shawn Michaels, Sean Waltman, X-Pac, Kevin Nash, Triple H. And, of course, then he was a member of NWO when WCW was still run by Ted Turner before Vince McMahon bought it in 2001, to say the least. And basically what's been going on nowadays is that Scott Hall's demons has really run rampant. His drug problem has gotten worse. Everything in his life is spiraling out of control. His alter ego is still with him. As far as Razor Ramon, he has not outgrown that character, nor has he learned to control it, along with how he's controlled the wrestling business, his life, or the drugs and the alcohol in which he has taken and abused time and time again. I mean, been through 9 rehabilitations, but never really stayed in one. I mean, this is like a bad case of Lindsay Lohan, but of a big man of professional wrestling. I mean, this guy is about 6 foot, what, 5 or 6 or something like that. I mean, he's the Lindsay Lohan of professional wrestling. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I'm not even sure if there's any turning back for Lindsay Lohan at this point in her life. I mean, she's younger than Scott Hall. And let me be honest with you. A lot of these wrestlers that have died throughout the years have died way before the age of 50 years old through the drug problems, injuries, certain other deaths in the ring, or whatever the case may be. But amazingly enough, Scott Hall is 53 years old, and he is still not doing. He's really doing worse for himself right now at the moment. And what I mean by that, I read this article last night. It was very disturbing, and it was called "Last Call for Scott Hall" by Mike Mooneyham, and this source is, of course, from PostandCourier.com. And basically, he was just writing about how Scott Hall has been through his downfalls and how his family has pleaded for him, especially his ex-wife, who married him twice, by the way. Her name is Dana Hall, who has recently came out and actually spoke her mind and really spoke her concerns about the ex-husband of hers, because she has been through hell and high water through him, basically working through his problems and trying to work out the marriages twice, but it's the lifestyle that got so out of control that she couldn't handle it anymore, and she had to divorce him twice. And the mother of these 2 children named Cody and Cassidy, which I feel very bad for the family because they don't know how to cope to be, you know, I mean, they're coping the best they can, but they never really had a normal life or a father that they could look up to or anything like that. But what Dana Hall needs to realize too, and everyone else needs to realize, is that Scott Hall was never really normal to begin with, just to let you know. Yes, she did blame professional wrestling for making it worse, but to be honest with you, it's not really professional wrestling or the profession that he went into. He never handled his demons before he got into professional wrestling. He was already that way before that, and Kevin Nash even said it on his blog, and I believe what he said, that he came out, and when he began professional wrestling, it really spiraled out of control. See, if people have demons and issues, do you really think that money and fame is going to help solve that? More likely not. Why? Because they haven't learned to deal with it within themselves to begin with. So anything outside of it that increases will so do their demons. Everything like that will start to increase. I mean, he's even saying Scott Hall himself even says he's chasing demons still. I mean, after all these years, I mean, I remember back in WCW when I remember watching it, I thought that when Scott Hall came out on Raw, I thought it was an act. And I really thought, but then I also found out later on that Scott Hall would come out intoxicated. Lex Luger, another professional wrestler, would yell at him, and a lot of people were like, "What's wrong with you? You know, why are you being like this? Why are you coming out all intoxicated?" And just to make my point, Scott Hall basically was released from TNA last June for his disorderly conduct in the public, which shouldn't surprise any of y'all. It doesn't surprise me one bit. And then on top of that, he, as far as coming around intoxicated, I mean, of course, he was also resisting arrest from the police, so that was no surprise. But here's another thing that has happened too recently. At an independent show in Massachusetts, Scott Hall was billed as a headliner attraction when Top Rope Promotions, which is an independent organization, staged its 30th anniversary pro wrestling show at a Fall River Police Athletic League. He was supposed to be the main guy. I mean, there was about 400 people showed up for this event to see Scott Hall. Now, normally independent circuits and events only have like a little over 200, maybe even like 300 at the best. But 400, that was a pretty damn good ticket sales for that night for independent circuit. Now, I'm not talking about WWE or TNA. They can do way more than that. I mean, when I talk about the more established organizations, we're talking about smaller independent circuits. So that's why I'm being clear on this. And then Scott Hall came in there very intoxicated, was in no condition to even go out in the ring or do anything. But instead, and then he had just, prescription drugs that he has overtaken way far beyond what was instructed for him to do. And to make matters worse, he was going around threatening the promoter by the name of Steve Ricard. He was the one who basically allowed this to happen, but really the reason why he said he allowed it to happen because Scott Hall, was threatening his staff, was threatening to beat him up and kill him and everything else like that. And also, Justin Credible, the incredible wrestler that he is, trying to stop him from getting out there, but he felt that he couldn't stop him. He's a big guy. He could do whatever he wants. He's stubborn. Well, at this case, why can't you call the police on him then? I mean, if it was Vince McMahon or Dixie Carter or any of these other big wigs of a big organization, even like Japan, Mexico, all these places, if he would have showed up and acted up the fool like he did, they would have had his ass hauled out of there or had him ass hauled out of there via handcuffs from the cops. Okay, that is unacceptable for him to be threatened like that. But not only that, but obviously the reason I could say that about the big wigs. What about the independent circuits? Okay, the independents don't really attract a lot of money or attract a lot of fans as it is. I mean, if lucky, via the internet, maybe 100,000 if they're lucky. So I don't know why he didn't take matters in his own hands. The only other thing that I can think of is that perhaps he felt that, if Scott Hall was not to show up, because he even admitted in the article that he was afraid that if he didn't show up, then the fans really would have been angry, and then he feared that the fans would have lost a lot of money, or not the fans, but the promotion would have lost a lot of money because the fans lost interest in the promotions. So if there's any indication of why they actually even showed that footage of Scott Hall coming out, having to be held by two grown men, having to help carry him to the ring, and then he slumbers all over the place and starts insulting and starts acting the fool. If that was one of their ways of creating their promotions to have a great publicity so that more fans could be in their seats, so they could have more ticket sales, more merchandises, more notoriety and everything else like that, well, guess what? Obviously it has to have worked then, because I never heard of that promotion until that time, until Scott Hall showed up and made a fool of himself. So a lot of people can say that, oh, they took advantage of Scott Hall, but overall, I would have to congratulate that promotion. I would have to congratulate Steve Ricard and the promotion for at least getting themselves out there that way, if that's what they're planning. If that's even, I wouldn't be surprised if even Steve Ricard even lied about him being threatened just so he can look better or so he can look good. And the real truth is they wanted to have publicity for his expense. But let's be honest with you. I mean, if you get yourself in these drugs, and I've seen it myself. I've seen people being in drugs. I used to hang around drug dealers and everything and drug addicts, and I've seen how this happened. I mean, when you are into these substances like that, you're going to attract parasites. You're going to attract people who are parasitic. I mean, there's no way around it. And so what I'm saying to basically about Scott Hall is that he's already had parasites with his team working for him, or otherwise, if that wasn't the case, then they would at least cared half the time, more so for him than for his money, they would at least try to get some help for him. But he also needed help for himself. That's another problem with Scott Hall, and he doesn't want the help. I mean, let's be honest, he doesn't want the help. So Dana Hall, I commend you for holding yourself together